This is the Lifted Spirits podcast, where we raise a glass, share encouraging thoughts and stories, and discuss how we find meaning through family, friendship, business, art, and everything in between. Today I'm doing another conversation with my buddy Neil, and we're talking about how we find meanings in our jobs. And just so much of our life goes to what you do for work and trying to find ways to make it more enjoyable, and the people we've worked with and the things about our jobs we've liked and not liked, and talking about how AI factors into the future of the job market. And I was surprised at how interesting the conversation was. But yeah, pretty much everybody has a job, so I think you will find this enlightening, hopefully, and enjoy the conversation. We're back yet again, me and Nelios.
Here we are.
And talking about finding meaning in your job, because I mean, it's something you do a lot of your life.
Yeah.
I started doing some math, but then I quit, and I was like, this is why I dropped out of college, because I was like, how many years are you working of your life?
Yeah.
I think it's something like 10-ish straight years of your life. If you have a 40-hour-a-week job, take 2 weeks vacation, and that's a bunch of your life.
Yeah.
And so it's something that a lot of people just sort of have a job and do it and don't think very creatively about maybe how to make it more enjoyable. And sometimes your job has flexibility and you're in control of some things, and other times it's pretty set. And so you've got to focus more on how you can make it enjoyable as opposed to making the actual process or job enjoyable. Because I'm sure being a custodian or something is only so much. There's only so much you can do. But I guess, another thing I had written down here was that both of us have encountered a problem with this podcast, and that we don't really like alcohol anymore, which is so ironic, because such a big part, not a big part, but definitely an aspect of starting.
It plays
this
into the name, you know?
Yeah, like, man, it'd be fun to find a way to converge interests and have a way to get some tax deductible whiskey purchases. And now I'm just like, I had a bronchitis flare up in February, and then ever since I just haven't wanted it. Like, it dries me out real bad, and I just don't sleep as well.
No, I think I'm just getting older too.
Yeah,
I have a couple beers now, and I just feel bad.
Yeah.
I've got like a 5-minute window where I feel pretty good, and then later and the next day I just feel bad.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. It's not like I feel hungover. It's just like, it's like I'm
A little off.
70%.
Yeah.
And I maybe just didn't realize how much it had been affecting me until I was sort of forced to not have any for a solid month, having the bronchitis. And so yeah, I'm not like, I'll never be a teetotaler because I do love whiskey.
Yeah.
But I'll just have to have it more far and few between.
Yeah.
And you hear all these podcasts about like alcohol is the worst thing ever, and it's debatable, because it's like, when they do these studies, are we talking people that are drinking Fireball, or like people that are drinking, a single grain malt Scotch whiskey?
Yeah, and even if the biological chemistry is factual, like it's harmful, it's still like, it can be good to relax and, enjoy time with friends and the social aspect and things too. So you kind of have to weigh that, and it's hard to factor that into a study like that. But it's probably not the greatest thing for you. But
yeah, and I just thought, you know what, I think maybe the rule would be like, I probably won't have any in the house anymore. Like, I'll drink some socially. Maybe I'll have a bottle, but I'm down to one bottle left, which maybe it makes me sound like an alcoholic, but I haven't been that low since before I was married.
Yeah.
So like,
well, you just stay stocked
years.
up. Yeah, you don't run through it. So
yeah, exactly.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I do run through it pretty well, because it's not like every night, but like a lot of nights, just have a glass or something. But not anymore. It's just affected my sleep too much. So, but it's not too big of a problem, because a lot of these non-alcoholic spirits are actually good. Some of them aren't.
Yeah,
like,
especially this mezcal. I do like this mezcal.
I bring out this mezcal for you a lot of times because I'm afraid to pop it on certain guests that I don't know as well, because mezcal's not everyone's.
Smoky. It might be good content if they absolutely hate it, though. You never know.
That's true. Like, this one's really good, Monday Mezcal. I won't mention the ones that are bad, but there are bad ones out there.
Yeah, this is good.
And
I never know exactly how to drink out of this cup, because it's kind of square. Do you go flat side? Do you go pour at the corner?
A drinker's choice. It's what I got.
It's
I
good,
got
though.
these from our friend Anthony for
Yeah.
my birthday, I think.
Oh,
Something like
nice.
that. And
He knows what you like.
exactly. And first, this sounds like a really dumb question, but I was thinking about like, well, what is a job? And that's not really just some like filler question to fill up a podcast, but especially because with AI taking over a lot of things, we'll have to think through, what is the purpose of an occupation? What has it been? What's no longer relevant? Because 10,000 years ago, there aren't jobs like salaries and occupations. You're just working the land, and eventually, I'm sure there's really interesting history of how employment came to be, and salaries and bosses and enterprises, and there's a lot of things that it seems like will become irrelevant, like cashiers or drivers or a lot of those sorts of things, and people who don't have careers or passions, like what becomes of them? There's the whole universal basic income, which for starters, it'd be great if people who do have a job could have universal like income that actually buys you a house and gets you basic needs.
Right.
But I don't know. Have you thought about that at all? Like AI?
Yeah. I'm pretty positive about it. I know there's a lot of fear and who knows what's going to happen, but my positive outlook would be that AI can take over a lot of the menial, busy work tasks and can free up humans to do more, expand our minds, connect with each other. If we can have some sort of AI to help us just do the monotonous everyday things that would free up humanity to do bigger and better things on the positive side, so I'm kind of looking forward to it. I know there's a lot of fear, but I'm trying to not be motivated or manipulated or whatever by fear anymore. So I'm trying to look for the positives and just be excited about it.
Yeah, and the thing with AI is it can potentially do all these great things for humanity, and if it ever starts becoming a problem, it will very soon not be a problem anymore because we'll all be dead.
Yeah.
And so just why even worry about it? Like if it
yeah.
takes over, it'll take over.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going to have any control over what these Silicon Valley executives are deciding on the ethics of things.
Yeah.
I know there's a debate between the Google founder and Elon Musk about... Elon Musk was mad. The Google founder does not program AI to be partial towards humans. Like it's like all life in the planet. And there is something, humans can get very human-centered and just dump our waste places. And so I get the environmental concerns, but then the debate's like, well, if AI could see us as a problem in the food chain and be like, you know what, let's get rid of this.
Cancer.
Yeah.
And so I've heard there's some pretty huge implications for the environment as well, just creating AI and the energy and the amount of electricity that it takes to just create these things and keep these whatever servers running. I don't know how any of that works, but I've just seen some studies where it's the environmental impact of just creating these things is through the roof. Crazy is not ideal, but we'll see what happens.
And we're both very driven people, so I think if we were just given a salary to do whatever we wanted, then we would still do a lot of things. But a lot of people aren't really that way, and it's not because they're not great people. Just a lot of people just want a job, like something to do. And so I kind of wonder what becomes of that chunk of the population. I'm just throwing out a number, but maybe like 30% of the population is that way, that just wants to have something to do, wants to be a part of something, a part of society, and contribute in some way. And that's why there's, greeters at Walmart and stuff. And I don't know.
I think we would discover a lot of different ways to do that and what that looks like. And it would be a really cool experiment to remove the identity of your job from so many people. Because that's who we are, like I'm a firefighter, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm the trash guy, whatever. We become that guy, and we do it so much, and we train ourselves on it. We think about it all the time. But if we could kind of step outside of that, like who who are we really without that thing attached to us? I don't know, that'd be pretty exciting and cool, and hopefully, I think people have enough passions if they just sit down and it's like, you don't have to go to work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday now, but what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And in our healthiest place, I think we would have a passion to do something like help, animals, or go hike around, or try whatever it is. I think people would figure out some way to contribute in a way that made them feel maybe more true to themselves than just going to a building 40 hours a week, and punching on the keys or whatever you do.
Yeah, and I have to remember since I do, I work for myself technically, and where I'll have a day where I'm not particularly focused, I'll have to remember that it's not like people who have a 9-to-5 job are being efficient 8 hours a day. They're also watching YouTube videos and doing all this other stuff. And my brother would watch, he had a job that he got laid off from, not because of this, but because the business just went under. But I can't remember, I want to say that he did 2 hours of work a day for his 8-hour day job, and then would watch documentaries and things like that. And it's like, wow, that's economy.
Yeah, I just had to remind myself of this the other day because I have a lot of, not free time, but I create my own schedule now a lot of the times. And that can be difficult. But, I totally lost what I was going to say. What did your brother say?
My brother was watching documentaries.
Yeah. Okay. So I've had to remind myself that when I feel like I'm not being efficient enough, I'm not doing enough in my day, I didn't wake up at 5 a.m. and do yoga and have breakfast and go on a walk or whatever, read my book. I'm like, how much work did I really get done when I worked in this office job or at this place?
Yeah.
Maybe 4 hours?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
And you're just contributing to some corporate entity maybe?
Yeah.
And it's even the work that you did, what did it do for the world? Maybe it did something. Depends on what your job is, but I've had to center myself and be like, okay, even people who go to a place for 8 hours a day aren't getting that much done.
Yeah. So if AI could take over a lot of that grunt labor, people could probably find a lot more fulfilling things to do. And because does anyone really want to go somewhere for 8 hours a day and do a task that they don't particularly enjoy? Because the things they even enjoy are maybe their coworkers or the people they interact with, and finding other ways to involve them in that process and it be more fulfilling for just on a whole societal level. Because I'm not like I don't even really know what capitalist means or something, because there's definitely the big crony capitalist where you're like, oh my gosh, these people are making so much money, and the average Joe is not making nearly as much in America. But then, people could find ways to have their own ventures, even if it's a small business, if they don't have such an intense need to just do this thing to survive, to make enough money to survive.
Yeah. I think about the scarcity mindset a lot, and how that affects us, of just gather all the nuts you can for hibernation. Winter is coming, gather in for me and mine, my family, mine. And if we could get to a place where we understand there's enough for everyone, if we're not all trying to hoard. You know? So maybe we can take that next step with something like AI.
There's we went backpacking one time in the desert, and I hate carrying a bunch of water on my back, so I just chugged a ton before we set off on the trail, because you got to be prepared. That's the same thing, And that's how I'm pretty proud that I got this nickname of Kamala Anderson, because I just down my water. But then thinking, that's not necessary, and then it's all sloshing around in your stomach, and it's not as scarce. You're not gonna die, probably. We did run out of water because one of our friends had a mental breakdown just halfway through this 3-day hike, and we had to stop early. And then I ran out of water, and my wife still gives me trash. You drank not all my water. There are a lot of factors in that at play there, because the other thing was I told her at some point, because it was me this sounds sexist or something. It was me and 4 girls, but I was thinking at some point they're going to want me to carry their water. Yeah. I know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like we got to the top of this mountain on the first day. They're like, man, I just, can't do anymore. Like, okay, I'll help carry it. And I had less water, so I could add more water to myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, scarcity mindset. Yeah. Don't have to have it. And which, speaking of like, sexism and feminism. That's always a good segue.
Let's dive into that.
No, because I've just thought like the irony of, obviously, I think women should be able to do whatever they want. My wife's gonna probably go back to medical school, and so, but at the same time, I find it so ironic that, that feminism in a weird way has almost been like the biggest win for capitalism ever, because they got to devil the workforce with like adding women, and women should absolutely, if they want careers, they want to like do something, but a lot of women's dream wasn't to be sitting behind a desk doing things for another man, ironically enough. And so finding ways to empower women and the things, like, even I think it'd be neat if there was like, if a lot of the basic labor that's in society that could be taken over by AI, a lot of the women in those industries could make more industries around female health and like, just a couple days ago, Alexis was with a lady who had a miscarriage and in the hospital, and a lot of those things. It's not like you can blame somebody for those things, but a lot of things, like, if there was just more care, you could be more on top of things, and even if it's not child related, just women's health is complicated, and so there's all sorts of potential.
Yeah, I'm all for women taking over leadership.
Oh yeah,
guys aren't working out.
Yeah. We probably broke. I don't know, because you grew up Methodist, and so did they have female priests or anything?
No,
like
they do now.
Okay, but
nope.
I knew a lot of them do now, but I just always thought it was ironic growing up that people would say, well, you can't, there's a verse in the Bible about like Eve was more easily deceived, and so that's why women can't be in leadership, and I'd think, well, church history doesn't have a great record of male leadership, and so it seems evident that men can be deceived too, and so there's a whole that whole thing, but ultimately it's like women. I think women are. We talked about this on one of our first podcasts about, like, I just think women are more naturally mature and spiritual, and I find myself more commonly impressed with a woman than with a man. And men need to do a lot of work to catch up. Anyway, now that I'm off my soapbox, hot take. So I wanted to go through, some of the jobs that we've had, from like the more adult jobs, not adult industry, to, like, I think my first job was just a pool house, checking people in. And that was about it. There was very little responsibility, but, like, what was your first job?
I think my very first official job was cleaning RVs. My grandparents owned an RV lot, and when the new ones came in, they'd have to be detailed out, just all the factory grime and dirt and stuff. So I think I only worked 2 days a week, like Tuesday, Thursday or something. And I was working for my grandparents, so it wasn't bad. And there was just me and 2 other older redneck dudes in the shop, just hanging out, cleaning RVs. So I think that was my first.
So did you get to work with your grandparents or your parents?
No, they were in like the main building and doing big boss things. But we were kind of in like a back. It wasn't even the mechanical shop where they worked on engines and things. It was like a separate, further back where all we did was like clean. So
peasants' quarters.
Yeah, the peasants' quarters.
Yeah.
No, it was good. Yeah, it was good. It was a good learning opportunity.
Yeah. And especially to be a part of something that's family owned. And
that was cool, because I had never had a lot of connection with it. My dad didn't work there or anything, and we would go over there after school sometimes and hang out with my grandma, but I never had a real connection to it. So it was nice to kind of work that summer before I left for college, to just kind of have some peace in the family business.
Yeah. My parents are both pharmacists, and I think all my other siblings worked at the pharmacy, and I kind of wish that I would have,
Mm-hmm.
but I just thought it was such a like weird world to me. It's one of those things where it's not like my parents are anti-pill. Obviously, they're pharmacists, but we just wouldn't take much growing up.
Yeah.
Probably because they knew like what
Yeah.
what's in it, and yeah, and so I think I was a little more anti
Yeah.
medication
You weren't
than I
pro
am
big
now.
pharma.
Yeah, and so, but I feel like it would have been worth it to just be able to work with, be a part of a family trade, see how my dad does things. Or my mom has been really part-time since we've been born, basically, and then past 8 years, I don't think has even worked. But I kind of wish growing up that, I would have. It's just, I think it's valuable to work with your family and learn from people that are older than you. And this wasn't my first job, but I had a job right out of college that was electrical work with a guy who was 40, and so I was 20, he was 40, he had kids, and it was just like one of the best experiences I've ever had, of just so many lessons learned. He was just a good boss, good at teaching, good at interacting, good at when you totally screw something up, like showing you what you did and not blowing up, and when people would screw him over in business, just seeing how he would react to that and try to negotiate and peacemake and all that kind of thing. And I just thought, man, we need more of this in society, of mentorships and not just like jobs or task.
Yeah, that's a great first job.
Yeah, well, again, this wasn't my first job.
Okay.
When I say first job out of college, that's without a degree, because I didn't graduate.
Yeah.
But because the first job I would have had was at the pool house, and it was nice because I'd just bring my guitar and like practice and kind of taught myself guitar, and then read books and things and check people in, and so that was pretty great. And I'm trying to think what else I wrote down. I taught piano lessons because I grew up learning piano, and I enjoyed that. I just wasn't good at it, because you can play piano doesn't mean you can teach.
Yeah.
And I don't even play by ear necessarily. I'm more almost just like play by spirit and muscle memory. Like I just feel it.
Bones.
So kids would be like, "How do I do this?" I'm like, "Just feel it, man." Like I don't know. But they'd ask me questions about scales and things. I'm like, I haven't done scales in forever. I have no idea what's going on with that, or what pentamic iambitor means, or all these other things, or even really, really basic music stuff. Music isn't like a left brain thing to me at all. Like it's very much like something in your body. So that I wasn't great at, but I did enjoy it the time that I did. What were some of your other early jobs?
I worked in some kitchens. So I worked in a pizza. I worked at Guido's for a summer. I worked at Marketplace for like a month, and that was awful because that was my first job after I left there to go to my grandparents' RV lot. So I didn't even really count the month-long thing. But I always wanted to work in a restaurant. I always had these dreams of maybe being a chef or going to culinary school or something. And it was a pretty legit restaurant. And I got on, and I was doing prep in the back, and the list of things that I had to get done was just ridiculous. And you have like 5 hours to do it. You're just cutting and mixing, and I couldn't do it. So I was working 2 hours overtime every night, and they didn't like that. So I lasted about a month there. But I worked in some kitchens. I worked in Taziki's, like a fast casual restaurant, for about a year.
They catered our wedding.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was going through college. I've worked some office jobs. I had a contract job with IBM where I just called Walmart managers and told them to back up their servers because we were going to be taking them offline. So I just had hundreds of Walmart stores, and I would just sit there all day long and call and say, "Back your servers up." That was pretty rough too. I worked in another office job where we had a commercial cleaning franchise, and we would sell the franchises and then help them with their business. And that was a good learning experience too. Construction, drove a beverage delivery truck for a while, delivering mostly Bang energy drinks when they just took off. It was unreal. And then the fire department was after that. So I worked with the Arkansas football team when I was in college, filming practices and games for them. So that was cool. But yeah, I've dabbled in a little bit of everything here and there. So
similar. What were some of the? We'll start off with low points. What were some of the worst things about some of those jobs?
The office jobs were just painfully boring, and it was a lot of dealing with people, which was so good for me. But a customer service job where you're in the middle, because I don't own the business, the franchise owners own it, and so I'm not their boss, but the customers still come to me to solve the issues. So I'm kind of this middleman of trying to suggest things to the owners because I'm not their boss. I can't tell them what to do, and trying to convey to the customer that the issue will be fixed even though I'm not the one who could fix the issue. And it was just so draining because I'm an introvert and I don't like, confrontation. I don't really care that you're upset that your toilet had a spot on it after they, whatever. But it was so good for me to have to come in every day and talk to those people and go and check on them and initiate those conversations that were going to be hard for me. So I guess I turned that into a pro, but I might do that with all these, because all of these cons are cons, but they're things that led me to a better place. So that construction, some of the jobs we did were awful. If it's freezing, sleet and rain, we did a foundation repair on a house that had a crawl space, and so we had to crawl. I mean, it was probably 1.5 feet, 2 feet of space, so we had to crawl in there, jack it up, get it leveled. And then we had to mix concrete outside after we hand dug the holes for new piers inside with a trowel. Put the concrete in a bucket, close it, put it on a sled, and then drag the sled in on your belly, dump the concrete in the hole, and then go do it again. So we had several things like that where it's just like you finish with the day and you've got 2 or 3 more days of doing the same back-breaking work for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. But it makes you a lot more mentally strong to just have to wake up and just go do it and just knock it out.
Yeah. And I think it's useful, maybe not that everyone has to do this, but having a manual labor job at some point is really useful to just keeps you humble, or hopefully where, and that spice went down the wrong pipe.
I got a gnat attacking me.
Yeah. It's summertime. And, because for one, you can always be thankful if sometimes you're doing a menial task and you're like, well, at least I'm not on a roof in July,
Yeah, exactly.
And it also gives you more appreciation for the people that are doing that and not at all thinking of them as like these dumb people. Because I've worked with a lot of, I always forget, is it blue collar or white collar?
Blue collar.
Okay, blue collar people. And they're usually the people who have like the street smarts. Like they might talk like this, a little bit, but they're the ones that really know what's going on. And a lot of people in offices, I just think, oh my gosh, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And like you don't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah. From what I know about a lot of the business world, the higher up you go, the more you get paid and the less work you do. So it's kind of backwards.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd said something else about well, first off, was there any redemption arc of the marketplace cutting up things and the list of things to do?
I think very highly of people that work in kitchens now. I don't, those people are very highly skilled. I don't know. I think that was just another one of those things where even before you go into work, you're dreading it, but you still got to go and you still got to show up and you just have to do the best you can. To show up to get your butt kicked by a barrel full of onions is very humbling, but to do, you do it and then you learn that you can do it and you can overcome. And so it made me a better man, but it was not fun.
Yeah.
And then everyone else in there is angry at you because you're slowing them down, and it's just a whole thing.
I'm way too detail oriented, which comes in handy for something like editing because it's just you taking your time on details. But for a lot of jobs, that's been a problem where I'm just too slow or taking too much time, or especially with construction. We do demos and demolitions, and I'd be trying to make sure we don't like break something off where it snaps the wrong way and then messes up this other thing that we're not trying to demolish.
Yeah.
And that would just be taking way too much time. Another guy would come in and just do it all and would probably end up breaking the thing we're not supposed to break, but then he'd be like, we'll just fix it.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so I'm not good at that kind of thing. And I'm also not good at, I think everyone, I'm sure, has some degree of learning disability, but mine is probably just that until I really understand something, I'm totally clueless, and I can memorize and repeat steps, because I did landscaping and irrigation for a year or two, and I would be told to do tasks, and I could do those tasks. It's like they showed me how to do this, but I don't know all the mechanics of like what's going on. And so if they asked me to do it in any different order or like somewhere in the middle of the process, I wouldn't really know what's going on. And one of the guys was like, Andrew, working with you is like 50 first dates. you never know what's going on. And they actually went and got me tested for autism too. but like when your employer,
man.
yeah, has that little faith in you.
Yeah.
But it's just once I get something down, like I've got it down forever, and that's just how my brain works. Even with the piano stuff, I can play every song that I've ever learned on piano without music because you just feel it. But it's like that's not a terribly useful skill. I wish I could apply it to more practical things.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy to look down on landscapers or your plumber or whatever. Like, oh, I'm a smart guy. I could do that.
Yeah.
You know? A lot of people could not do that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it takes a lot more than you think, and especially just to have the discipline to wake up and go do it every day.
Yeah.
You know?
And so much blue-collar stuff is problem-solving every day constantly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's nothing ever goes according to plan, and you're trying to put in a pipe, and there's another pipe there that wasn't supposed to be there, and like trying to figure all that out. It takes a lot of intelligence.
And if you're a small business, you're doing customer relations, you're doing your own accounting, you're estimating for the job, you're probably swinging a hammer too.
Yeah.
It's just a lot.
Yeah. The guy I worked with doing landscape, and he was over 60 at the time. He's probably getting close to 70 now, but he would still be out there like laying sod and digging out rocks twice as fast as I could as a 18-year-old man boy thing.
Yeah.
Like, dang.
And you think about that, and it's like, how could you have any life outside of that? Those guys are working so hard, maybe putting 60, 80 hours in a week if they own the business. They don't have time to think about anything outside of themselves. They don't have time to ponder the universe or God or think about things happening overseas. Like, and you can't fault them for that. They're just trying to survive and feed their family. But with the invention of AI, maybe we can change that.
Yeah. And sometimes a lot of those people are doing those things too, because they're just doing sort of some parts of their day are very repetitive, and they're just listening to a podcast or the radio or thinking about something. And I just have a lot of respect for those kinds of people.
Yeah.
Some of my jobs other than piano, I did tutoring too, which that's a good story because I got this tutoring job. There was a big tornado in Joplin in 2010 or 2011, something like that. And there was a trip going to do some relief work. And so I was going on that trip, and I wanted to get rid of my Xbox because I have a very addictive personality, and I can't just beat a game. Like, I have to beat it on the hardest mode and get all the achievements and all that kind of thing. And so I thought, you know what, I'm sure someone probably lost their Xbox in the tornado. I'm going to bring it along and just see if I can literally pass it off to someone. And so I go on this trip. A person who's on the trip from the area is like, oh, I actually do I do tutoring for an agency that works with kids in the foster system, and there's a foster home that I know is looking for some sort of console that the kids can play with, and I told him that, oh, like tutoring, that sounds interesting, and it's like, yeah, I could totally set you up with an interview. And so I literally traded my Xbox for a job interview, which is such an apt analogy for life. And I've always thought, man, that's such a like archetypal story. And worked for them for like 8 years or something on and off, and only really stopped at the pandemic. And so that was a lot of fun, especially but also challenging because a lot of kids were in the foster system, and sometimes there's one of the kids who he was being a bit of a punk all day during the session, and then his grandma came and picked him up, and I told him, well, he wasn't doing very well today, and she said, yeah, he's probably having a rough time because his mom went to jail today, and I was like, oh, that's tough. You just never know what any kid's going through, let alone if they're in the foster system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just being a kid and having all the emotions in the world, but zero of the tools to deal with them.
Yeah.
Like more and more, I'm just seeing that in our kids where I have gotten a lot more patient, where, yeah, I'm just like, oh, you have no idea what's going on. You're just terrified and confused and scared, and like you don't know what to do with all these feelings, and they just like take over your body. And it's just like something you gotta build up.
Yeah, I think having all these different experiences allows us to approach situations like that with curiosity rather than condemnation or hatred or like an anger at that kid or whoever it could be, to just come to them and be like, this makes me feel angered, or this makes me feel disgusted by you, but when you feel that, come to it and be like, I'm gonna be curious about this. Why does this person feel the way they do? What's going on at home? Even if I disagree with what's happening, why? And can I learn enough about them to figure that out, or at least be a listening ear? But I think if you have experiences and you've expanded yourself and opened your mind a little bit and found things that rock your world or change the way you view things or people, it really allows us to come at things with curiosity rather than fear or hate or anger.
Even ironically enough, thinking with your own kids, thinking when they're acting up, what's going on at home? What's going on here?
What am I doing?
Yeah. And I've, certainly still have my days, but I've been trying to work on, especially with our oldest, where the meltdowns can be a bit more louder and more intensity as they get older, just trying to think, okay, he's a good kid. We read this book by Dr. Becky. I forget her last name. She's like a famous child person, but she has a book called Good Inside, which I didn't really think was that great, but I thought it had a lot of good points.
The overall book?
Just the overall book. Okay. I won't get into it. I guess some of it was that it seemed a little almost like over empathetic towards everything.
Okay.
Like every time a child is acting up, there's a reason, or there's some underlying trauma or something. It's like sometimes the kid is just hungry and being a little punk, and that's just part of life. But anyway, the message of the book, totally agree with, of trying to remember when you're mad at your kids, like, this is a good kid that's just having, big problems, and trying to always go back to that of like, okay, this creature is screaming and like driving me insane, but this is totally a good kid. Like, you think of all the things they do and the ways just this morning, I was cooking breakfast and our baby was tugging on my leg and crying and stuff, and her big brother came and brought her a bunch of toys in there, and so, it's just like, these are good kids. Most people are fundamentally good. And, well, that's just a long line of jobs that I've had. The landscaping, irrigation. I worked on the beach for a summer in Destin. And that was a job I kind of got on accident.
Okay.
And it was for a summer program, and you're supposed to get a job, and then like in the evenings you do the summer program. And the job that I got, the way it was described to me was, you'll work at a hotel on the beach and you'll bring chairs and umbrellas out to people.
Yeah.
I thought at their, little pool or something, and but then I got there on the first day and they're like, no, like, you're on the beach. I thought, I don't think you understand. I'm a redhead. I don't belong on the beach. I die on the beach. And somehow I managed though. But that was some of the hardest labor, because you get a bunch of wooden chairs that you stack in like a castle around you and have to pick up, and then walk through sand. It's like you can hardly get a footing. And so it was really good hard labor. And it was definitely not OSHA certified, because there were times where there'd be a big storm coming in, and they had us pick up all the umbrellas, and So I'd be running around with all these like metal poles, and I'd see lightning strike like a mile out into the ocean, and it'd just be like, get in the box, get in the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a really fun job and had a fun crew.
So I have a good friend who has been doing that for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now. But shout out to Gordon out there. But yeah, that's hard work.
Oh yeah.
And he's been down there for years.
Yeah.
But he'll get 8 miles in a day.
Yeah.
Because he'll carry the huge stack of chairs and then go run back down the beach.
Yeah.
Pick up more chairs. That's not an easy job.
Yeah. I slept well.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it was just for a summer.
Yeah.
But it was really neat to be out on the ocean, and during the storms too, I'd have to go out with the main boss would, be riding our canoe. I don't know what the word is. It wasn't really a canoe.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really a kayak. But anyway,
Like
he'd
a
be the
banana
one.
boat thing.
Something like that. But it'd be a 2-person thing, and I'd have to grab the buoys and pull them up. And so we'd just be getting slammed by these massive waves with the red flags up where no one's supposed to be out. And I'd be pulling up, and I'd be like, okay, here's another wave. Hold on to it. Don't drop it. And I'd have to get smashed by a wave.
That sounds kind of awesome, though.
Yeah, it was kind of awesome because it was
the
like
Coast Guard.
Yeah, it was high intensity, lots of adrenaline. But I thought, I don't know if this is legal to have people doing this, but here I am, and
made it.
Yeah, and I did get on the. I was on the poor beach too. Unfortunately, I had other friends in the industry, and it's like, man, I should have gotten the rich beach with where all the
better tips.
Yeah, better tips, because the tips were pretty dismal. Can't complain too much, but that was a good job. And a lot of my jobs, like I'm even reflecting on this. There's people at all of these, and that's kind of the common thread of the people are often what makes a lot of it so worthwhile.
Yeah.
Is just laughing with the guys or girls or whoever. And I don't know. I'm trying to think if I really worked with many girls. Let's see, piano lessons, pool house, tutoring. I guess I've mostly worked with dudes. I work with my wife doing pictures and videos.
Yeah.
And the wedding industry is, I guess, largely a female dominated space. But yeah, most of my previous jobs were that kind of thing. Any other you already touched on turning some of the lows into highs, but what have been some of your favorite aspects of the jobs you've done?
I think maybe as a generic pro to all these random jobs that I've done, they've all given me a different perspective. They've introduced me to a different type of person. They've introduced me to a different levels of efficiency, different levels of motivation, different bosses, different managers, different industries. And so all of this, I think, we kind of touched on it, just broadened my perspective, made it easier for me to communicate to people, relate to people, understand the world around me better, even the ones that I hated or didn't necessarily enjoy. Just that experience, I think, has been huge in making me who I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. To not be stuck in just one industry, but kind of have seen several types of things. And you always think that the people that are rude to waiters have probably never had a job of that nature,
right?
And realize how hard people are working.
Yeah. One example that I've been thinking of recently that has really been helpful, and it just kind of hit me in the past week, was when I worked for the fire department. You run medical calls, and so if their heart stops, it's called a code blue, a code, and so we call it running a code. And so when you're in rookie school or in EMT school, you learn how to do these things. You learn how to do the procedures, how to hold the mask, how to do CPR, all of these things, work in a team. And you have this idea of what that looks like and how that works in a classroom. And then you go do it in the field when you actually show up to someone's house and they're dead and you go to work with your team. It's never perfect. It's never ideal. There's always a dog barking at you, or a lady crying, or a couch in the way, or whatever it is. But even the really, really good ones, when we do everything possible, may or may not get them back, whatever, but it's a good code, whatever that means. It's efficient. We did all the right things in the right times. It's still a disaster. And so I think about that now as I'm going forward in life and I'm trying all these different things, and I wonder, how efficient should I be in my day, and what should that look like? And I should be reaching out to people more. I should be having more deep conversations, or I should be an activist here. And I just have to center myself and be like, even when it goes well, none of this is perfect. It all looks like a mess. Even when you save a life and do everything right, it looks like a mess. Something wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Somebody tripped over a chair, or somebody threw away something they shouldn't have, or whatever. And so just being in that intense environment and seeing the difference in how it's taught, how it's talked about, what it looks like in the classroom versus real life when it goes well, totally different. And just having that understanding in myself and giving myself that grace of, it doesn't always have to look good to get the job done, and I'm doing enough. And like we said, some people go to work and work 2 hours in their 8-hour day. Okay, it's allowed me to take a breath.
Yeah.
But that's like a very specific thing that I learned in that world. But there's so many different examples of that in all the different lines of work that I've had. That's just been like, okay, like I'm a better person because of that. I can give myself more grace. Like I understand the way the world works a little better.
Yeah. It's like life is messy and there's always problems. And I know everyone likes to trash the education system, and most people are doing the best they can with what they got. But at the same time, I don't think it prepares people enough for just I was going to say the real world, but I thought, man, that sounds like such a boomer thing to say. But like it's so much bookwork and like very controlled. And if there were more, there's things like shop class, but I don't know anyone who's in shop class. Maybe you did it.
I did not.
But, or like practical things. And we visited a school they're international, but they have one here in Fayetteville called Acton, and it's pretty neat because it's like the kids get free internships at places just to learn from people in the industry, and they have their actual school, but then they'll teach them how to email someone, how to set up a phone call, how to shake a hand, all these really basic things, and have every 6 weeks have it's not a science fair because it's not all related to science, but just the kids have to give a presentation on something that they've been into, or and it's a public thing where anyone can come, and this is really neat because it's a lot more just hands-on and finding ways where the work you're doing is the stuff you're actually interested in. Because another thing that they do is, I think they have to complete all the courses by the end of their high school or whatever, but they can do them in different orders. Like you might have done very little of your math. You might be on like a third grade math level as a seventh grader, but then you're like, oh, okay, I really got to catch up on math, and then you start doing a bunch of your math and and kind of get interested in it. And but yeah, there's different ways of doing things. And one of the jobs that I had too that I wrote down was I managed the Help House. Neil knows all about this.
Yeah.
There's this 6-bedroom house in the middle of a college town that was surrounded on all 4 sides by apartment complexes. And it was sort of like a halfway house of half the people in there kind of had their lives together, if you consider me kind of having my life together. And then half the people were people who were coming off of drugs or, getting in all these various life situations, ex-convicts. One of the guys who lived there the whole time I was there was a guy who'd been in prison for a long time and couldn't find a place anywhere else that would take him in. And ex-convict life can be rough because, you got to deal with the consequences of your actions. But then this was a guy like you would have never known that he would have done anything because he just seemed like a pretty average dude. And and so that was really meaningful because I met every kind of person imaginable. There were like over 30 people that lived there like on a lease paying rent, because a lot would be short term to get back up on their feet. Might only be there a month or 2 months or 3 months. But it was meaningful on the level of like I grew up in pretty well-to-do circles, and I was pretty turned off by that by the time I was 13 or something. Was kind of the anti-establishment and grew out my hair and all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But but that was like the peak of that era, was like being around all these different, what a lot of people would consider the underbelly of society and that kind of thing, and realizing how human everyone is across the board and from different ethnic backgrounds, from different religious backgrounds, different, all sorts of different sexualities, and never really having been deeply exposed to that kind of thing, and seeing like, oh man, people are just people, and you can have someone. There are a lot of not so great stories too of people not paying. It was basically, I was in charge of getting the rent, so whatever wasn't covered, I would have to pay. And if it was set up where if everyone paid, like I would get paid some too, but that hardly ever happened. And so it was a lot of free work, and there are people who would say Fayetteville's a kind of hippie town. One time someone said they couldn't pay rent because Mercury was in retrograde, and like that meant something, and so they couldn't pay rent. And
what?
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. And a lot of people just straight up like stole money, and there's one guy that I'm so naive and I'm too nice, and it's part of what's made me a little more hardened over time. But there's a guy who we both know. I'll tell you after. But he, before he moved in, I like had a walk with him, and I was like, "Look, man, there's been a lot of people come through here, and a lot of them have promised to pay, and they haven't, and it's really hard because like now I'm having to pay, and so I just, if you're gonna move in, I want to help you, get a job, get on your feet, but like I really need you to pay." And he's like, "Oh yeah, like absolutely," and all the promises, and then never paid anything, and it's just hard to, like, those are the life experiences where you're just like, okay, this doesn't have to make me bitter or jaded. It can make me maybe wiser, and can have a different way that I interact with people when you're trying to be charitable, but trying to learn those lessons in a way that makes you more compassionate and just not more cynical about it, or like distrustful of people.
Yeah, an experience that deepens you rather than hardens you.
Yeah, because you don't want to be skeptical of everybody.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to always be looking for, like, oh, what are ways they might backstab me? I just watched The Godfather last week. I hadn't seen it since a long time ago, and I wanted to know, does it really live up to the hype? And I think it's good. I don't think it's the best movie of all time. But anyway, but I was thinking, man, how do people who are in mafia life or whatever, it seems so stressful because you never know who you can trust. Like someone can backstab you at any time.
I know.
Or, you'll be sleeping with the fishes, and like that's just not the kind of life anyone should have to live.
No, absolutely not.
But the other thing in relation to that is it is great storytelling, The Godfather. There's so much like family. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, well, now being fresh in my mind, I was trying to think of like, okay, why is it so popular?
Yeah.
And especially the second one, there's like so much of the family generational stuff, and like how the families connect, and the one brother is the one who's the kindest to Michael Corleone, but then he's the one that gets killed in the end. If you haven't seen it, like, it's your fault. It's been out for 50 years or whatever.
You had the time.
Yeah, you had the time. But yeah, and it ends with the scene of like the main character, Michael. He joined the army, and his family really disapproves of that. And his one brother, who he already killed, because this is a flashback at the very end, is like, the only one who's supporting him. And you're like, man, you can't even trust your brother, and all these sorts of things. So you don't want to live in a world where you can't trust people.
Absolutely.
Or in a job, like, even if it's not mafia, but like a job where you can't trust that someone's going to do what they say, or, like, you want to be the kind of person that if my boss tells me to do something and I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And that was so many of the initial work lessons, was just, okay, like showing up on time, like doing a good job, trying to not hate my life and enjoy it as much as I can so that I'll be a better worker. And there's a Tolstoy quote about how, like, if you're a good worker, you're kind of indispensable, because even if the hard times come, your employers will know that you're a hard worker and that you're productive and you're committed, and that can go to extremes because there's like unpaid internships and then there's the modern system where you work really hard and you get like $1,000 raise and you're like, thanks guys.
I think it's this mindset that like came from the mom and pop era where you want to help these people because they're a family that's trying to survive like you. That you can't carry that same mindset of I got to do everything I can for my employer and give it all to the company when it's
Nabisco.
Or Walmart or Amazon. Like, it's okay. I don't care about help. Like, I'll do a good job, but like I'm not going to dedicate my life and work overtime and unpaid hours and take phone calls on the weekends and all these things. Like, why? You know, they're not going to be there with you on your deathbed. They're not going to put your kids through college. They're not going to put your parents in hospice. Like, it's okay to be a little, it's not even selfish, but it's okay to be a little selfish. You know, I mean, especially when it comes to a job. Like
there's a difference between being selfish and just like not working yourself to death.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Americans do.
Right.
And so that Help House job was something. By the end of it, I literally had $300 in my account, and that was a depressing point in life, because that was like a couple weeks before I got married, and somehow I was doing some kind of accounting with my mom, and we had like we didn't have the same bank account, but we were in the same like system, I guess, so she could see my bank account. She's like, why do you only have $300 in your bank account?
You're gonna start a family?
And so that was really embarrassing. I was like, a lot of people owe me money, not in like a mafia way, but you know, they said they were gonna pay rent, and because I just ended up definitely losing a ton of money in that gig, and but think of it as hopefully it made me a better person, but a less naive person.
The property was kind of yanked out from under you by the owner at one point.
And that was another, a lot of these are, I should write a book called Lessons in Naivete, or whatever the pronunciation is, because I don't know, I just like, I'm the kind of person where if people say they're going to do something, I just assume that that's what they're going to do. And that's the way our parents raised us, like, be true to your word. And so I had made the mistake of, we had leases to finish the year, but the company that was going to buy it, another big corporate BlackRock company that was going to buy this house and turn it into an apartment complex, because all real estate will be owned by them at some point in the future. But they just basically said, like, well, we're going to just kind of negate your lease because you're not going to sue us. Like, we know that's not going to happen.
You don't have the power to sue us.
And that's essentially what it boiled down to. And so I tried to work out something with the owner of the house, and we had a verbal contract that we wrote on a piece of paper and signed, and I guess maybe that doesn't have any legal power, but he didn't stay true to that, and so that all just kind of sucked. I'm like, oh, I just lost a shit ton of money, and didn't even, it was totally worth it. But now,
even with all of that, I can't speak for you, but for me, not losing money on the situations, being around and just meeting all of those people and having those interactions, some good, some bad, but just more of that learning of just seeing a different side of people, a different way of interacting, just a different, type of people that we didn't grow up with. You know? And that taught me a lot.
Still wouldn't trade it for anything, because even like the amount, I'd have to look through, I think I wrote it in a journal somewhere, like how much money I actually lost, but it's probably, if I had to guess, maybe I lost like $4,000, which at the time was a lot of money proportionally to what I was making. And, you know, now it's still not chump change, but it's like $4,000 for that. I try to think of it as like, that's what I paid for the experience. You know, some people will do a summer program or, you know, and so that was just my fees and royalties and all that kind of thing. And then getting into my final job, I guess, doing the picture video stuff of, because actually first, before I go into this, like, you talked some about the fire, being on the fire squad, but like, share more about that whole journey.
Oh, yeah.
Ups and downs.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can articulate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I left the fire department in November of last year. So it was a great experience. I'm so glad that I did it. I was there for about 4 years. In the end, the cons just outweighed the pros, and that is what it is. I didn't think I could and didn't want to do another 24 years of it to make retirement. The money's not good, as you can imagine, which you understand that getting in. You don't get into it to get rich. But several experiences where money was being spent other places. It didn't seem like administration was really going to bat for us. And then you turn around and get the rah-rah speech and you're just like, okay, you're full of it. Like,
what about the pizza party?
Yeah, the pizza exactly. We had those pizza party moments and it was just more frustrating than anything. When it's a job that wears on you, it takes a lot from you, it screws up your sleep schedule. The cancer rates are through the roof, and they're finding that's from multiple things, not just the toxins and the fires, but the messed up sleep schedule. And actually, there's a class action lawsuit right now because of the gear that we wear, bunker gear we wear to protect us from the fire is actually leaking forever chemicals into our skin. And there's pretty good evidence that they may have known that that was going to happen when they're superheated in the fire. So there's stuff like that where you just come to it and you're like, man, I really love to help people. I did some of the coolest things I've ever done. But I have to look out for me. And it's like I just said, you know, they're not going to put my kids through college. Like you want to talk about brotherhood, but they're not going to take care of my parents when they get older. You know, like there's only so much. And I got to a point where this isn't going to give me the life that I want to live. You know, I have to leave my wife for 48 hours at a time and soon kids maybe. So all that to say, like, I learned so much. I pushed myself to limits that I didn't know I had physically, mentally, spiritually. I helped people. But I think at the end of the day, it's a great job and I still encourage people to apply. But I think I just had other things ahead of me. I think my journey has taken me somewhere else. And so even with all the negatives, I think that's just what it is. It was they slightly outweighed the positives. And so I made the choice, and it wasn't easy. And it was another instance in my life where I had to strip that identity, because there's things like that where there's sports or service jobs like that, first responders, military, where you really take that on and it becomes who you are. And that's good. It means you're passionate about it, but I think it's also very dangerous because you're more than that. And I kind of had this experience in high school when football was kind of taken away from me through injuries, and I had to reinvent myself going into college. And that was one of the best things that ever happened. And I think it's happened in other micro ways through the years, but I think this was another kind of bigger thing where I had to do a hard thing. I had to make it hard on myself. Leaving wasn't easy. But I'm proud of myself that I did it, because I had to overcome a lot of guilt and shame for feeling like I was leaving people, or like I got into it to help people and now I'm leaving because of things that are about me. And that still tugs at me sometimes, but I don't stay up at night thinking about that. Like I still help people. I still contribute. Like that's not the only place to go help. So I'm really proud of the things I did, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. And now I'm kind of doing a bunch of different things that afford me freedom and flexibility to just kind of explore and do handyman work or carpentry, or do some online remote work, or just I'm still doing some wildland fire stuff. So I'm just kind of in a weird limbo place right now. I don't regret leaving at all. It was an awesome experience. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling, but there's so much to it that even when I got to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to turn in my notice, it was hard to articulate why.
Yeah.
But I just felt it in my bones, and it was hard to tell people too, like, what are you going to do now? And a lot of those people, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, like I was taking a coding class at the time and I just kind of, that was my thing. Like that was an easy thing to say. Like, oh, I'm gonna do some coding. Because nobody really knows what the hell that is anyway. It's like it can mean a million different things, and it was something that sounded good and sounded stable and sounded like it would make more money. And that really was one of my goals, to do that part-time, but that didn't work out. But I just couldn't, unless that person wanted to sit down with me for 30 minutes or an hour and really listen to everything that's happened in my life. You're not going to understand it, and I don't expect you to. And that's kind of where I'm at with a lot of things now: spirituality, job, just, whatever. I don't feel the need to evangelize where I'm at, and I don't feel the need for you to understand it, but I'm still, I'm going to be curious about you. I hope you're curious about me. And, so that's where I'm at. It's exciting times. It's scary times. It's been huge growth in the past 6 months since I left. The growth that I've had, my wife and I both, has just been exponential. Because life has been hard and you have to figure it out, and you have to strip yourself down to the core and be like, who the hell am I without this thing that I attach myself to? And yeah, there was some depression in there. There's still some anxiety and there's ups and downs, but I'm learning so much about me, and I think I'm going to be such a better man and person and be able to contribute even more than I was in the fire service. So.
And what was one of your most memorable stories from being on the fire squad?
I mean, someone told me, a senior guy told me when I started to write down all the calls that were memorable, and I never did. And so sometimes now I'll just be in a random place and one will hit me. I'll be like, whoa, that was real. That thing happened. I don't know. I mean, there's obviously tragic calls. There's people in tough situations. I think the most memorable things were spending time with the guys, getting to know them, because you're doing life together for 48 hours at a time in the station. And then when you can carry that, like, just playful, whatever, picking at each other, making fun, dark humor, whatever, that, just guys being guys. When you see that in the field and someone's in a life or death situation and all the guys are just working together in perfect unison, perfect. I described the code earlier, but it's just really cool when you're like, this guy's my brother. We were just hanging out, like having a hot dog eating, whatever we were doing, and now we're out here saving a life and we're communicating perfectly, and he knows what I'm doing. I know, but just being in that well-oiled machine was really like a special thing when you're doing it to help someone in real time, quickly, efficiently. So yeah, that's kind of a ambiguous answer, but just being a part of that team was really cool. Yeah.
Sounds like it.
And being able to bring some levity to the situation. Like a lot of the crews that I worked with had just jokesters on them. Like firefighters are some of the weirdest jokesters out there. But people aren't having a good time, and if they're not actively dying, to get their mind off of it, to tell them a joke, to distract them, to be weird, off the wall, it really does help the situation, and it's funny for us. Nothing harmful, but just weird stuff. So yeah, having those conversations in the back of the ambulance were really cool.
Well, my photo video stuff, I guess I started that was kind of a part-time thing while I was doing a lot of these other things, and became more of a full-time thing around when we got married, so in 2016, 2017, and which I remember the first year I did it like full time, I made something like $18,000, and I felt like I was just rolling in the dough, because based on the jobs I'd had before. Well, no,
you were married?
Yeah, this was like after getting married, and not very promising for Alexis or her parents or my parents or whatever. But I'll always remember the conversation that Lex and I had. I mean, there's multiple conversations, but one in particular where I was like, okay, I feel like I could really do this. Like, I don't want to work a job my whole life that I hate. I want to do something that I enjoy, that has flexibility. And I know this is a roll of the dice, but we can do it together. And so yeah, it's neat kind of having built something together, like as a couple, that I probably wouldn't have been able to do on my own. And so that's been really meaningful to get to tell people's story of how they fell in love and all that kind of thing, and is something that I find immense meaning in, and I've learned all sorts of lessons in naivete too. We actually hadn't had problems with this, ironically enough, but we did over 200 weddings before even using contracts, because it was just like, hey, we do a good job. If we don't, like, we'll give you your money back or something. And just kind of handshake type deals, and really only got them eventually because of popular demand and people asking, like, do you have a contract? And I get, like, people want to feel secure. So I get it now. But it's just like, people, a lot of times I think contracts are for people who don't know how to problem solve or to, teamwork and compromise and all that kind of thing. And, but it's something that's, added immense value, and get to do usually like 1 or 2 travel weddings a year. So it's sort of like a paid vacation type thing. And it's fun to get to do as a family or with just me and my wife, where we get to get out and go somewhere and do a wedding, and then take a few days after to just explore a place. And but really I knew that I had to do something that I could find intrinsic meaning in. I loved working in the chicken houses doing electrical work with the mentor guy who was 40. You wouldn't think that'd be a great job, but I just really loved that job, even though it was hot and sweaty, and there was like chicken and turkey junk all over the place. And it was just a good job, probably because it was so dirty. Like, it just gave you that appreciation for what it takes to make something happen. And I, even at that stage, I was like, okay, well, I love chicken and I love eggs. And so I'm being a part of this productive cycle. And I have to find meaning in things, but it's a lot easier to find intrinsic meaning and telling people's love stories and that kind of thing with wedding photos and videos. And there's all sorts of stories I could go into there. But then other than that, the only other kind of job I've had is this podcast thing. It's been a lot more work than I anticipated, and a lot slower growth than anticipated. But for whoever is listening, we do appreciate you, because I thought that I had pretty low expectations going into it.
They weren't quite low enough.
Yeah, they weren't quite low enough. And I guess I just don't know how YouTube and things like that work. But I was like, I feel like, because part of it, it's not like just about growth or it becoming a job, because I knew I had to do something that, even if it totally tanks, feel like I was still using my time for something meaningful. And so it's, like, worst case scenario, I interview all these interesting people and learn a thing or two, and get to give people a platform to share some about what they do. And that's really rewarding. But then over time, if it could be a potential side gig, that'd be great too. Just have different eggs in a basket, and not all in the photo, video, wedding industry, and not having to work weekends indefinitely with kids and all. And so anyone who is subscribing and liking and commenting, you're appreciated much. And I think my initial goal was, like, even if I just get 1 subscriber a day, like, that's not much, right? Like 30 people a month. It's like we're at 55 months in. And so, hey, it is what it is.
10 a month.
Yeah. It's that exponential curve, right? Just got to be consistent. But it has been super fun, because there's several reasons why I started the podcast, but one was I was listening to so many audiobooks and podcasts, and I just thought I'd love to do something with all this information, and started listening to a lot more, like, how does YouTube work, how to make a thumbnail, and it's kind of fun to, like, learn something and then apply it in real life, and different angles, different ideas, different titles, different ways to plug things in with links, and different ways to connect with other creators. And so that part's been really fun, and I do really enjoy it, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, I'm thankful that you enjoy it, because I just show up and talk.
Hey.
And I feel like I'm running out of things to say.
No,
I'm not... Who wants to listen to me?
No, that's like, even this conversation has been pretty free ball, and we're just having a having a conversation.
Yeah.
Like we're getting together and drinking a non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
And
hopefully some of my thoughts are being conveyed in a digestible way.
Did you ever see the Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
Where he's like, no, it's a non-alcoholic beer. And he's like, what? I don't understand. What do you mean? Like, if you drink a bunch of these, you'll get really messed up. He's like, no, there's no alcohol. That's the point. He just doesn't compute to him.
Yeah, exactly.
But always try to end with a challenge. And so do you have any challenge to people just in relation to how they can find more meaning in their job?
Yeah. I'm going to start with a lesser degree, and I'll move up. I've got 2.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I've just talked about. I would encourage everyone to try to, even if you just do it as a game, try to divorce your identity as much as you can from what you do, and just see what you come up with. Ask yourself who you are outside of that to the core, not what you do, not even your hobbies, but like who you are. I would really encourage people to just sit with that outside of the things that your job tells you are, or the time that it takes up. Set aside some time to think about these things. The more intense degree is, I will say, this isn't a rule across the board. Everyone's life is different. Their situation is different. But if you have a tug and you hate going to the place that you go to every day, stop going to that place. Do something else. There's ways to find money. I don't think you're going to starve. Again, situational. If you got 10 kids and your spouse doesn't work, do your thing. But where this is coming from is, I know plenty of guys who are in jobs. I know plenty of guys who are firefighters who will talk shit about it all day, talk about how much they hate it, but they're never going to have the balls to leave. That's what it is. And, I kind of patting myself on the back, but I took the leap. It was not easy. Yeah. But there are guys that I see that I'm like, man, if you would just do something else, you would be so much happier. You would find yourself. You would sleep better. Whatever it is. So if you have that tug, find something else. I know jobs are hard. I know you need money. Not everyone can do it, but don't stay somewhere out of fear. I guess that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. And my challenge is really just to piggyback off that, of just finding, even if it's not changing your job that you hate, like if there's something about your job that you hate, just trying to get creative and thinking like, could you even, if there's a certain task that takes up 20% of your time at your job and you just hate it and it makes 100% of it miserable, maybe asking your boss like, hey, can someone else do this? And I'll maybe even take a pay cut, because I would rather like focus that not to like not have as much time, but even have more mental energy and put more time towards the things I think I'm actually good at and that I enjoy and that I have skills at doing. And and because there's so many things that you can do, especially when you're young. And we had some friends that they're like 22 and recently married and all this stuff, and we had a long conversation about career with them, because it's not like they hated their jobs, but they're like, like it's hard. We don't know if we like it. It's a lot. You don't make good money. It's like, you can do it. Not anything you want, but like you might as well try, especially when you're young. Like just try something. And even if it means, cutting down on your standard of living for a bit, and because people do have a really high standard of living, and I'm a pretty trashy person. I've gotten a lot better, but back in the day it was like it's easier said when I was at that halfway house. It was rented by room, and the rooms were really cheap, like $300, and I was splitting a room with a friend, so I was paying like $150 for rent. So I get that, but like you can find a way to do that. You can have a roommate. You can like.
I bristle every time I hear someone say I can't or it's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, how much is your car payment? Do you need that $50,000 vehicle to get you from A to B? Like, how often do you go out to eat? Like, and I'm not trying to sound like what's the finance guru.
Oh, Dave Ramsey.
Just stop eating out. Everything's fine. No, not at all what I'm saying. I acknowledge the realities of the economy, but would you rather live with a little more happiness and joy, or just work for the next 50 years and be miserable.
Yeah.
We're only here for so long, sell the car, wait to have kids for another couple years, don't get the dog, whatever it is, like there's ways to do this.
Yeah. And it kind of boils down to just like, what do you want? And what the economy sucks. There's no getting around that. But it boils down to, this is how it is. Like, it sucks for not everybody, but for a lot of people. And at some point you just have to say, hey, this is awful. And I don't want to hate my life and do something and get paid lower and lower wages. I'm going to just try all that I can. You can either, and it'd be great if the system changes. It should, it needs to. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. But even becoming that kind of person, there was that dude who, what's his name? He had the company that he raised the minimum salary to like $70,000 and he took a massive pay cut and then his business exploded in a good way. And just showing there's different ways of organizing your business. You could be that person who's doing those things in your industry and making it to where if you're a boss, you're making sure that your employees are actually enjoying their life and not hating their life and not struggling to pay every bill, and that will make them better workers. And then if you're an employee and see that in the management, that they're doing their best to respond to you and listen to you and take care of you, then like giving your all, and where it's not just like giving your all so that the Nabisco CEO can have another yacht.
Yeah, exactly.
That's that. We've kind of been rambling for a bit, but enjoy your life. You're gonna do 10 years straight of some occupation probably.
Yeah.
So why spend 10 years of your life miserable? If you don't count sleeping, that's probably what. More math. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's a lot of your life.
Yeah,
that's the point. Don't hate it. Do what you can.
It's too much of your life to just put your head down and just be miserable and trudge on when you may never make it to that day you're planning for.
Yeah.
We have to somewhat enjoy each and every day.
Yeah.
Living, so.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening. See you next time.
See you.